Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Facebook integration for Windows Store App series. My name is Christophe Nazar, and I will explain to you today how to get the list of albums and photos of a Facebook profile without forgetting the batching mechanism. Let's see what I want to achieve. I'm running the app. You have already seen all the logging mechanisms in the previous episodes, and here what I want to do is add in the login again, and then I can select the album. So for my account I will see the list of the album, and I see it's loaded asynchronously. I can select one of the album, and then also asynchronously load the images batch by batch, and I can move from one batch to the other, going back, and this is what I want to achieve. So I will show you today how to implement these features. But first, as I explained in the previous episode, the first step is always to go to the Facebook documentation and start a session in the Graph Explorer to figure out how to get the information you need and in which form. In this case, I'm interested in the album endpoint, so let's go to the Facebook documentation. Here I want to get the details for the album endpoint. Clicking on the album endpoint, and you get the permission that are required for accessing all the albums and photos, which is the user photos, and this is why I needed to change the code of my application. Let's see what is the change in the logging function. Here is the code. Go to the logging async function, and I had to add as a scope the user photos Facebook permissions. Simple, very simple. Let's go back to the documentation and start a Graph Explorer session. And here I first need to get the token corresponding to what I want to do. Remember, the user photo. So I'm clearing the current one, and I just want to get the user photos. Get the access token, accept, and then you can go to the Explorer and get, and I'm building the query, which is always me for the current user, and I'm asking for the album, submitting this GET request, and I have the corresponding JSON result. It's under the data route, and as you can see I have some IDs for each different book album, and then if I'm clicking the ID of the album I will get the details. And in my case, I'm mostly interested in the cover photo, the count, and maybe the type. So let's see how this JSON will be translated into my C# code. I have created a new set of classes here. Here is my album. I will pass the ID and the name. Let's see what I have in my JSON at the same time, so you can compare. I will keep track of the name, which is the name here. I will keep track of the count. I have the count here. The cover photo ID, which is the cover photo ID I get, and so on. I also keep track of the privacy of the type, and if you want to get less or more information, it's just up to you to pick the properties you want. One tiny detail here, but it's very important. Some of the album might not have names, or cover photos. So when you will parse the JSON that you will get, you will always have to check if the value of a key is there. I mean that you will always check if the key itself is here before asking the value, or you will get an exception. I have built a functions. I have added a new functions in the Facebook helper class, which is called getAlbumsAsync, where all the code to get the album is written. It's quite simple. I always check that I'm logged in, and I will store all the album I will get from the JSON in a list of album, which is the type I've just shown you, and I'm getting the result from the Facebook API through the Facebook client class by using the getTaskAsync, because I'm posting a get request with the URI that I have also used in my Explorer over there. If you remember, I started with the me/albums, and I get a dynamic result. This dynamic result can be seen as dictionary, as I have already explained. And here what I'm trying to get is from the album result, casting it to a dictionary of string and object. The string will be the key corresponding of each key in the JSON, and the object will be the values associated with the key. So for each item in the data section, because the first one is the data, if I'm going back here with the album, you remember the first one is the data, and then I will get one album after the other. So for each album, again, I'm getting the information by casting through a dictionary, because it's also a dictionary, and then I'm fetching one value after the other and storing it into the property of my C# class. I'm sure that there is always an ID, so it's safe to get the value without checking the key itself, but for other properties I need to check that the key exists in the JSON, because as I explained earlier, some of the album might not have cover photos or names, or maybe have no photos inside, so the count might be not defined for the result. Quite simple, always checking, converting the values into the type I need in my C# class. Here a count is an integer, and for the rest these are mostly string values. And then I can build my album, my new instance of album, and storing the information. I have some default values which are mostly 0 or empty string, and then I'm adding all these album one by one into my list of album, and I'm returning this list of album. Simple. Let's see how this is called from my my user interface. This function is called from my main page, and it's in the album click event. I'm getting asynchronously the list of album I just built from the getAlbumAsync from the Facebook helper, and I'm just associating this list to the item source of my grid view and this view in my XAML. And for each album I'm asynchronously getting the cover photo from this album. And this is very important that you understand that most of the code that you are doing are requesting asynchronous calls to the internet to get information. So this is how I'm building it. I'm first getting the list that I can use as a data source from my control, and then after that, one by one, I will change the value of my property, which is the cover image. And this is how you can explain how my list was built at the beginning, and I get all the title or the name of the different albums, but the pictures, the cover photos, come one after the other. So it's a very good pattern that you can reuse in your own development. And let's take a look at the load album cover photo async function. Here it is. Again, I'm asking Facebook to get the detail, so it's exactly the same as clicking here to get the details, and I get the information, and that way I will use the source information for the cover photo, which is this one. So let's see how you can get it. I copy the ID of the cover photo, me slash, oops, sorry, adding, and here you get the detail of the cover photo here, and let's make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to see the different properties of this photo. You have the creation date, the size, and you get the source of the photo, which is a link to the JPEG. If I'm clicking it, I will get my photo, and this is what I'm interested in here. You see, I'm translated, building the same query, which is the ID of the photo, and looking for the source. Where is my source over there? Here. Looking for the source, and once I have the source, I build the URI from the string. And this is only the string itself, so I need to do another call to get the image itself, and this is done by the bitmap image. I'm using exactly the same kind of code that I have done previously with the profile image to do the asynchronous loading of the picture by the bitmap image itself and the control. So this is how you get the first list, the vertical list of albums. You get all the title in one shot, and then you get the cover photo of each album one by one asynchronously. And I will show you how to get the photos for an album in the next episode of this series.